So how does it all start? Allah, nothing else. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, كَانَ اللَّهُ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مَعَهُ شَيْءٍ. First there was Allah and there was absolutely nothing else. You know, no throne, no pen, no water, no clouds, no skies, no nothing. And Abu Razin, there's an authentic hadith in Sunnah Tirmidhi where Abu Razin, he asked the Prophet ﷺ, he says, well, where was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before all of this? And the Prophet ﷺ says, كَانَ فِي عَمَاء مَا تَحْتَهُ هَوَى وَمَا فَوْقَهُ هَوَى. There was no air beneath him, no air above him. It was just Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you think about that and how amazing that is. And actually there's a sign in that. Where the Prophet ﷺ, he basically tells us that there is nothing but Allah that's worth it. Creation needs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else, because in the beginning there was Allah and there was nothing else. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he says that the asdaqu baytin qalahu sha'ir, he said that the most truthful poem that a poet has ever spoken, أَلَا كُلُّ شَيْءٍ خَلَى اللَّهَ بَاطِلُ, that verily everything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is disposable, because it was just Allah and nothing else. Now a lot of times, what Abu Razin radiallahu ta'ala anhu was doing when he asked the Prophet ﷺ that, and what we do at times when we see various ahadith where Allah is described, we try to limit Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by our human dimension. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends in the last third of the night and he asks, هَلْ مِن مُسْتَغْفِرٍ أَغْفِرَ لَهُ. The very famous hadith, is there anyone seeking forgiveness so I may forgive him? Is there anyone calling upon me so that I may answer him? And we start to think to ourselves, well, wait a minute, the last third of the night here is different from the last third of the night there. And so how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hearing everyone? And how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how does he judge what's the last third of the night? And what about Laylatul Qadr? And how does that all work? The problem is you're limiting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by your human dimensions. Allah is not subject to your time. Allah created time. So when you say, can Allah really hear everyone's prayers? Right? I mean, on the day of Arafah, think about that momentous occasion of Arafah. You've got millions of people in one location, all calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different languages. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is hearing each and every single one of their prayers. Why? Because that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the creator of time subhanahu wa ta'ala, so he is not subject to our dimensions of time. He's not subject to our human dimensions of anything. And that's why the ulama, the scholars, they have a very important principle that they say, كُلُّ مَا خَطَرَ فِي بَالِكَ اللَّهُ بِخِلَافِ ذَلِكَ. Every time you think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything that comes to your head in terms of an image or in terms of trying to assign a human quality, Allahu bi khilafi dhalik. Just know that Allah is different from what you just imagined. You're not going to be able to do it. You won't be able to actually grasp Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be grasped by our human minds. So the Prophet